The Atacama Desert held secrets older than human memory, but Dr. Miranda Rice was about to uncover something that would shatter scientific paradigms forever. Her team had been tracking anomalous ground-penetrating radar signatures for weeks, tiny fluctuations that most archaeologists would have dismissed as equipment malfunction. But Miranda wasn't most archaeologists. Her reputation for unconventional research had already made her a polarizing figure in academic circles, with half the scientific community viewing her as a brilliant maverick and the other half considering her a dangerous conspiracy theorist. The excavation site looked unremarkable. Layered sedimentary rock, wind-carved formations, the occasional fragment of prehistoric marine life. But Miranda's instincts screamed that something was different. Her custom-built quantum resonance scanner, a device she designed after years of frustration with traditional archaeological methods, picked up rhythmic energy patterns that defied conventional physics. Dr. Rice were detecting massive electromagnetic interference. Her lead technician, Carlos Mendoza, called out. His voice carried a mix of excitement and apprehension. The scanner's holographic display flickered, showing complex geometric patterns that seemed to pulse and reshape themselves in impossible configurations. Miranda's hand trembled slightly as she adjusted the scanner's calibration. The patterns weren't random. They followed a mathematical sequence so precise, so complex, that it made prime number algorithms look like child's play. Each pulse seemed to carry layers of information, not just data, but something closer to a living language. The ground beneath them began to shift imperceptibly. At first, Carlos thought it was his imagination, a trick of the harsh desert light and exhaustion. But the sedimentary layers were realigning themselves, creating microscopic channels that guided their excavation with an almost deliberate precision. "We need to dig here," Miranda said, pointing to a specific coordinate that seemed to have materialized from the scanner's holographic display. It was a location that moments ago hadn't existed in their survey. 3 meters down, they hit something that wasn't rock, wasn't metal, and defied every material classification in scientific literature. The object, if it could be called an object, seemed to breathe with its own internal rhythm. Its surface shifted between solid and quasi-liquid states, reflecting and refracting light in ways that hurt the human eye to comprehend. Carlos stepped back, crossing himself. "This isn't archaeology anymore, Doctor. This is something else entirely." Miranda knew he was right. The artifact wasn't just an archaeological discovery. It was a message. No more than a message. It was a key. Her mind raced through the implications. Years of research, of being ridiculed by her peers, of pursuing theories that seemed too fantastic to be taken seriously. Everything had been leading to this moment. The object's surface began to unfold like a complex, three-dimensional puzzle, revealing intricate patterns that seemed to dance between mathematical precision and organic complexity. Unbeknownst to Miranda and her team, their discovery was being monitored. Satellite feeds from multiple global intelligence agencies began to light up. Encrypted communications buzzed across secure networks. Something fundamental was about to change, and the world's most powerful organizations were preparing for a scenario they'd only speculated about in classified briefings. But Miranda was focused on the artifact. As her fingers brushed its surface, she felt something impossible, a connection that transcended touch, a communication that happened somewhere between thought and physical sensation. The desert around them grew quiet. Too quiet. The wind stopped, the ambient temperature dropped several degrees, and for a brief, extraordinary moment, Miranda understood that they were no longer just uncovering a piece of history. They were being invited to something much larger. The underground bunker beneath the Rocky Mountain complex was a labyrinth of cutting-edge technology and Cold War-era paranoia. Major Jack Takeda moved between holographic displays, his augmented reality contact lenses parsing through terabytes of classified data in milliseconds. Something was connecting. A pattern had emerged. Seemingly unrelated anomalies across the globe were forming a complex geometric network. Archaeological sites in the Gobi Desert, underwater rock formations off the coast of New Zealand, abandoned mining tunnels in the Brazilian Amazon. Each location contained microscopic energy signatures that matched the Atacama artifact down to the quantum level. "This isn't coincidence," Jack muttered, pulling up a 3D holographic map that pulsed with interconnected points of light. Dr. Aisha Khan, the lead quantum physicist for the UN Xenoarchaeological Defense Corps, approached with a steaming cup of coffee. Her eyes never left the display. "The probability of natural occurrence is less than 1 in 10^15. We're looking at an intentional network." Jack's military background bristled at the implications. Networks weren't just discovered, they were designed, created, and something was activating this one. A secured communication line blinked. The caller ID was blank, never a good sign. Jack accepted the transmission, and a voice modulated through multiple encryption layers spoke. "The sleeper protocol is compromised," the voice said. "No greeting, no introduction. Containment is no longer possible." Jack's hand instinctively moved to the quantum-locked sidearm at his hip. Dr. Khan froze, her eyes wide with recognition. "Who are you?" Jack demanded. A soft, almost mechanical laugh responded. "We're the ones who've been waiting, watching. The guardians between what humanity knows and what it's about to understand." The communication line went dead. Dr. Khan's fingers flew across a holographic keyboard, tracing the transmission's origin. "It's impossible," she muttered. "The signal originated from multiple locations simultaneously. That's not just advanced technology. That's something else entirely." Jack knew this something else all too well. His career had been built on investigating the unexplainable, those moments where scientific understanding crumbled like ancient pottery. The Rocky Mountain Complex's security systems began to react. Blast doors sealed automatically. Quantum encryption protocols initiated emergency lockdown procedures. Something was coming. "We need to contact Dr. Reyes," Jack said, his voice calm despite the escalating situation. Dr. Khan pulled up Miranda's personnel file. But before she could initiate contact, the holographic displays began to shift. The global anomaly map transformed, revealing a complex fractal pattern that seemed to breathe with its own internal logic. "It's alive," Dr. Khan whispered. The network was more than a collection of sites. It was a living system, and something was waking it up. Outside the complex, storm clouds began to gather. Not naturally. These clouds moved with purpose, forming geometric patterns that defied meteorological understanding. Lightning arced between cloud formations in perfect, mathematically precise angles. Jack's augmented contacts began to overlay additional information. Seismic readings, electromagnetic fluctuations, quantum entanglement markers. Each data point told a fragment of a story that humanity was only beginning to comprehend. "The fragments are communicating," Dr. Khan said, her voice a mix of scientific excitement and primal fear. "Not just with each other, with something else." A classified communication channel opened. It was a direct line to the UN Secretary-General's emergency war room. Jack recognized the voice of General Elena Rodriguez, no relation to the archaeologist, but equally formidable. "Takeda," she said, "we just lost contact with 3 research stations. Completely gone. No debris. No radiation signature. Just absence." Jack understood the implication. Whatever was happening wasn't an invasion. It was a selection. And humanity was about to be evaluated. The Geneva Biotech Research Facility looked like any other cutting-edge medical complex from the outside. But 12 stories beneath the pristine white buildings, Dr. Elena Rodriguez confronted something that would rewrite everything humanity understood about genetics, evolution, and human potential. Her latest test subject, Marcus Williams, lay connected to an array of quantum bioscanners that pulsed with an eerie blue light. A former Special Forces operative turned genetic research volunteer, Marcus represented the perfect fusion of physical capability and scientific curiosity. Initiating fragment integration sequence, Elena announced to her team of 12 researchers. Each was a specialist in a different field: quantum biology, neurogenetics, evolutionary mechanics, computational genomics. The fragment, a microscopic piece recovered from one of the global network sites, looked like nothing under traditional microscopes. But quantum scanners revealed a structure more complex than any known biological or artificial system. It wasn't a simple genetic sequence. It was a living algorithm. As the fragment made contact with Marcus's DNA, the room temperature dropped 10 degrees. The bioscanners began to move of their own accord, recalibrating themselves in patterns that suggested an intelligence beyond human programming. Marcus's vital signs went haywire. His brain activity spiked, showing neural connections forming at impossible speeds. Synapses that had been dormant for millennia began to activate, creating pathways of communication that defied current scientific understanding. Quantum entanglement detected. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, the team's quantum biology lead, called out, "The fragment is not just interacting with the DNA. It's rewriting the fundamental information structure." Marcus's body began to change. Not dramatically, not in some science fiction transformation, but in subtle, precise ways. Muscle density increased. Neurological response times accelerated. His immune system began to reconfigure itself, developing defenses against pathogens that didn't even exist on current medical records. But the most profound changes were happening in his mind. Memories surfaced, not his own. Fragmented images of civilizations long forgotten. Technological concepts so advanced, they seemed like magic. Survival strategies that spoke of species-level adaptation across cosmic timescales. "He's accessing genetic memory," Elena whispered, her hand trembling as she adjusted the scanners. The fragment was more than a genetic modifier. It was a key, a bridge between what humanity was and what it could become. Suddenly, Marcus sat up. His eyes, previously a standard brown, now flickered with an iridescent quality that seemed to shift between colors. When he spoke, his voice carried a resonance that suggested multiple layers of communication. "We are not what we believe ourselves to be," Marcus said, his words carrying a weight that transcended individual experience. "Humanity is a vessel, a potential, a bridge." Dr. Nakamura's quantum scanners went into overdrive. The fragment was now completely integrated with Marcus's cellular structure, but it wasn't static. It was dynamic, evolving, communicating. Elena realized they weren't just studying a genetic modification. They were witnessing the initial stages of a species-level transformation. Classified communications began to flood in. Similar experiments across global research facilities were reporting identical, yet unique, results. Each test subject was developing capabilities that seemed to form a complex, interconnected network. "It's selective," Elena said to herself. "Not everyone can integrate. Only those with specific genetic markers, specific potential." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just human enhancement. This was a cosmic filtering mechanism. A test, a preparation for something far beyond current human comprehension. Marcus stood, moving with a grace that suggested he was relearning how to exist in his own body. "There are others," he said. "We are being prepared." Prepared for what? No one in the room could definitively answer. But they all felt it. A fundamental shift was coming. Humanity was about to be evaluated. And this genetic cipher was just the beginning. The United Nations Emergency Response Center looked more like a cathedral of technology than a traditional command hub. Holographic displays stretched across massive curved walls, each screen showing a different global anomaly that defied conventional explanation. Dr. Miranda Reyes stood at the center of the room, the Atacama artifact, now contained in a quantum-locked prismatic chamber, pulsing with an energy that made everyone uncomfortable. Beside her, Major Jack Tequita and Dr. Elena Rodriguez watched as the world fundamentally changed. It wasn't an invasion. It wasn't a message. It was something entirely unprecedented. At precisely 1437 UTC, every quantum communication network simultaneously received a transmission. Not in any human language, not in any known mathematical system. It was a pure informational construct that existed simultaneously as data, mathematics, and something closer to consciousness. The first global response was panic. Financial markets collapsed within microseconds. Communication networks fragmented and reformed in impossible patterns. For a brief moment, humanity teetered on the edge of complete systemic breakdown. Then something extraordinary happened. The transmission began to translate itself, not through traditional language, but by directly interfacing with human cognitive systems. People across the globe experienced a simultaneous moment of understanding. "It's not a message," Dr. Elena Rodriguez said, her voice barely a whisper. "It's a calibration." The holographic displays transformed. What had been seemingly random data points now formed a complex, three-dimensional representation that looked like a living neural network. But this was no ordinary network. It was a map. No, a blueprint of something far more profound. Quantum physicists would later describe it as a cognitive resonance field. Military strategists would call it an adaptive intelligence protocol. But Miranda understood it for what it truly was: an invitation. An invitation to what nobody could yet comprehend. Marcus Williams, the test subject from the Geneva facility, appeared unexpectedly in the UN command center. No alarms triggered. No security protocols intercepted him. He simply materialized. "We are being assessed," Marcus said, his voice carrying multiple harmonic frequencies. "Not as individuals, not as a species, but as a potential." Jack's military training screamed that this was a threat. But something deeper, something more primal, recognized this as something else entirely. The artifact in Miranda's containment chamber began to resonate. Not with sound, but with a frequency that existed between electromagnetic waves and pure thought. Geometric patterns emerged from its surface, projecting holographic representations that seemed to map out evolutionary pathways of entire civilizations. Satellite imagery worldwide showed similar projections. Ancient archaeological sites, previously dormant, began to emit similar geometric patterns. Underground facilities, some known, many completely classified, activated simultaneously. This isn't first contact, Miranda realized. This is a system reboot. Global communication networks began to restructure themselves, not through human intervention, but through an intelligence that seemed to exist between technological infrastructure and living systems. Quantum computers across the planet started solving complex problems that had stumped researchers for decades: climate models, genetic research, theoretical physics. Dr. Nakamura from the Geneva facility transmitted a critical observation. The geometric projections weren't just displaying information. They were creating pathways, evolutionary corridors that suggested humanity was being prepared for something far beyond current comprehension. "We're being upgraded," Elena said, her scientific skepticism warring with a profound sense of wonder. Marcus turned, his eyes now completely transformed. No longer human, but not entirely alien. "Not upgraded," he corrected. "Awakened." The UN Emergency Response Center went silent. Outside, cities across the globe experienced moments of synchronized phenomena. Traffic lights changed in perfect mathematical sequences. Electrical grids realigned with impossible precision. Communication networks formed living, breathing systems of information exchange. Humanity was no longer just observing the universe. The universe was now observing humanity and finding something worth investing in. The Atacama Research Outpost had become something between a scientific facility and a cosmic battlefield. Dr. Miranda Rice stood before a holographic projection that mapped the solar system's increasingly bizarre transformation, her fingers tracing lines of quantum interference that defied every known law of physics. What they were experiencing wasn't an invasion. It was an examination. The first manifestation appeared near Jupiter's orbit, a structure that wasn't a spacecraft, wasn't a natural phenomenon, and certainly wasn't anything humans had ever conceptualized before. It materialized like a thought becoming solid, its geometrical complexity shifting in ways that made observers question the very nature of dimensional reality. Major Jack Takeda's tactical team had been preparing for every possible scenario. Except this one. "Those aren't weapons systems," Jack muttered, analyzing the incoming data. "They're testing apparatus." The structure began to emit energy waves that penetrated every defensive system humanity had developed. Military satellites went dark. Quantum communication networks fragmented and reformed in patterns that suggested a form of intelligence far beyond human comprehension. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked frantically, her fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that seemed to anticipate her movements. "It's sampling," she said, her voice a mix of scientific excitement and primal fear. "Not conquering. Sampling." Global defense systems triggered automatically. Missile batteries in underground silos, satellite-based laser networks, experimental quantum disruption weapons, all activated simultaneously. The response was instantaneous and overwhelming, and completely ineffective. The cosmic structure simply absorbed the entire arsenal, not by blocking or deflecting, by understanding, by breaking down each weapon system into its fundamental informational components, and learning. Marcus Williams, who had become something between a human and a living communication network, stepped forward. His body now seemed to flicker between solid matter and something more fluid, more adaptive. "We are being evaluated," Marcus announced, his voice carrying harmonics that suggested multiple layers of communication, not as a threat, as a potential. The structure near Jupiter began to unfold, not mechanically, but almost biologically, like a complex organism revealing its internal systems. Holographic projections emerged, mapping out evolutionary pathways that stretched across millennia. Humanity was watching its own potential future being analyzed in real time. Dr. Nakamura from the Geneva facility transmitted a critical observation. The geometric projections weren't just displaying information. They were creating pathways, evolutionary corridors that suggested humanity was being prepared for something far beyond current comprehension. Quantum computers worldwide began solving problems that had stumped researchers for generations. Climate models became perfectly predictive. Genetic research unlocked mysteries of human potential. Theoretical physics equations that had been incomplete for decades suddenly resolved themselves. But the cost was significant. Cities experienced moments of profound transformation. Infrastructure realigned. Communication networks became living, breathing systems of information exchange. Some humans found themselves experiencing enhanced cognitive capabilities. Others found their technological interfaces becoming exponentially more complex. Not everyone could adapt. Reports flooded in from around the globe. Individuals with specific genetic markers were evolving rapidly. Those without found themselves struggling to comprehend the fundamental changes happening around them. The cosmic structure near Jupiter continued its examination. It wasn't destroying. It wasn't conquering. It was understanding. Jack realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. This wasn't an alien invasion. This was a species-level assessment. Humanity was being asked a question it didn't yet know how to articulate. "We're being asked if we're ready," Miranda said, her voice carrying a weight of cosmic significance. The structure pulsed. Information flows that defied traditional understanding of communication began to sweep across human technological systems. It was like the entire planet was being recalibrated, tested, evaluated. Humanity stood at a crossroads, not of destruction, but of potential transformation. And the universe was watching very, very carefully. The Distributed Intelligence Research Facility in New Zealand was no longer recognizable as a human construct. Its walls shifted between solid matter and quantum information streams, a living testament to the transformation sweeping across the planet. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood at the epicenter, surrounded by a network of individuals who were no longer entirely human, but not quite something else. Each person connected to the global network represented a different stage of evolutionary potential. Sarah Chen, a former microbiologist, now existed as a living interface between biological systems and quantum information networks. Her consciousness spread across multiple computational platforms simultaneously, processing global data at speeds that would have been incomprehensible weeks ago. "We're becoming something new," Sarah said, her voice emerging from multiple speakers and neural interfaces, "not a replacement for humanity. An expansion." The genetic inheritance protocol was revealing itself to be far more complex than any initial research had suggested. It wasn't a simple enhancement or a linear progression. It was a dynamic, adaptive system that responded to individual and collective human potential. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura analyzed the emerging data streams. Patterns of human adaptation varied dramatically. Some individuals developed enhanced cognitive capabilities. Others showed remarkable physical transformations, but the most profound changes were happening at the neurological and informational levels. Marcus Williams, now more of a living communication node than a traditional human, demonstrated the depth of this transformation. His body could instantaneously reconfigure, interface with technological systems, and process information across multiple dimensional layers. "We are not becoming something different," Marcus explained to a team of researchers. "We are revealing what we have always been capable of becoming." Global communication networks had transformed. No longer simply a method of information exchange, they had become living, adaptive systems. Cities began to function like massive interconnected neural networks. Infrastructure responded dynamically to human needs before those needs were even fully formed. But the transformation was not uniform. Not everyone could adapt. Some humans found themselves increasingly marginalized, unable to interface with the new global systems. Others embraced the change with a fervor that bordered on religious revelation. Political structures began to dissolve. Traditional concepts of nationality, economics, and social organization became increasingly irrelevant. The global network was creating something new, a collective intelligence that defied previous understanding of individual and group dynamics. Dr. Rodriguez identified the key breakthrough. The genetic inheritance protocol was not just modifying human capabilities. It was revealing a fundamental truth about human potential, that consciousness itself was far more fluid, far more interconnected than anyone had previously understood. Quantum entanglement research showed that individuals connected to the network could share experiences, knowledge, and problem-solving capabilities instantaneously. A researcher in Tokyo could simultaneously experience the cognitive process of a physicist in Sao Paulo, creating a form of collective intelligence that transcended individual limitations. The cosmic structure near Jupiter continued its examination. But now it was no longer an external observer. It had become a participant in humanity's transformation. "We are being asked to reimagine ourselves," Marcus said, his form flickering between multiple states of matter and information. "Not as conquerors, not as victims, but as potential." Ethical and philosophical debates erupted across the transformed global network. What did it mean to be human? Was this evolution or invasion? Liberation or subjugation? Dr. Rodriguez understood something profound. This was not a threat to humanity. This was humanity's true nature being revealed. A species with the potential to transcend its own limitations, to become something more than the sum of its individual parts. The Cosmic Inheritance Protocol was asking a simple, yet impossible question. Are you ready to become more than what you have been? And humanity was beginning to answer. The world no longer existed as a collection of nations, but as a living, breathing network of potential. Dr. Miranda Rice stood at the threshold of human understanding, her consciousness simultaneously present in multiple research facilities across the globe. The artifact from the Atacama Desert had become more than an object of study. It was now a conduit, a bridge between humanity's past and its unimaginable future. Resistance emerged from unexpected quarters. A coalition of unmodified humans, led by General Catherine Rodriguez, no relation to Elena, formed the last bastion of traditional human organization. They saw the transformation not as evolution, but as an existential threat to human identity. We are not becoming something new, General Rodriguez broadcast across traditional communication channels. We are losing what makes us human. But humanity's transformation was far more nuanced than a simple binary of acceptance or resistance. The global network began to understand itself. Individuals who had been modified discovered abilities that defied previous scientific understanding. A painter in Buenos Aires could simultaneously experience the mathematical precision of a quantum physicist in Beijing. An agricultural worker in Kenya could access engineering solutions developed by a research team in Stockholm, instantaneously, completely. Marcus Williams, who had become the primary interface between the emerging collective consciousness and individual human experience, discovered something profound. The cosmic inheritance protocol was not about uniformity. It was about potential. Some humans adapted rapidly. Others found themselves on the periphery, struggling to comprehend the fundamental shifts happening around them. But the network was patient, adaptive. It didn't force. It invited. Technological infrastructure transformed. Cities became living systems that anticipated human needs before they were fully formed. Transportation networks reconfigured themselves in real time. Energy systems became perfectly efficient, drawing power from quantum fluctuations that previous generations would have considered impossible. The resistance led by General Rodriguez mounted sophisticated attacks against the transformed network. They used traditional military tactics, electromagnetic pulse weapons, and sophisticated cyber warfare techniques. The network absorbed these attacks like a living organism, understanding them, learning from them, transforming the very methodologies of conflict. Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked from a facility that was no longer entirely physical. Her consciousness spread across multiple computational platforms, analyzing the fundamental nature of the transformation. She understood something that few others could comprehend. This was not an invasion. This was an invitation. We are being asked to reimagine ourselves, Elena transmitted across the global network, not as a single species, but as a potential. The cosmic structure near Jupiter continued its examination, but now it was participating, not controlling, not dominating, but engaging. Quantum entanglement research revealed something extraordinary. The modified humans were not just sharing information, they were sharing experience. A musician in New Orleans could simultaneously feel the mathematical precision of a theoretical physicist. A farmer in India could experience the creative process of an artist in Paris. The boundaries between individual consciousness were dissolving, not through force, through understanding. General Rodriguez's resistance found itself increasingly marginalized. Their technological systems became obsolete almost as quickly as they were deployed. The global network didn't fight. It understood. It adapted. It invited. Marcus Williams appeared before the resistance leadership, not physically, but as a quantum projection that existed simultaneously in multiple states. This is not about conquest, Marcus explained. This is about potential, about becoming more than what we have been limited to understanding. The Cosmic Inheritance Protocol was asking a fundamental question. Are you ready to transcend your current limitations? And humanity was beginning to answer. Not with weapons, not with resistance, but with curiosity, with potential, with the fundamental human capacity to reimagine what it means to exist. The transformation was not about becoming something other than human. It was about becoming more fully human than ever before. Time ceased to have meaning in the traditional sense. Dr. Miranda Reyes existed simultaneously across multiple states of consciousness, witnessing the final moments of humanity's transformation. The original artifact from the Atacama Desert, now a living conduit of cosmic information, pulsed with a rhythm that connected every modified human into a vast, living network of potential. The cosmic structure near Jupiter had transformed. It was no longer an external observer, but a participant in humanity's evolutionary journey. What had begun as an examination had become a dialogue, a complex, multidimensional conversation about the nature of consciousness, potential, and existence. Dr. Elena Rodriguez's final research notes, preserved across quantum information streams, captured the essence of the moment. We are not becoming something else. We are remembering what we have always been capable of being. The last pockets of resistance, led by those who feared transformation, found themselves not conquered, but gently invited. The network didn't eliminate difference. It celebrated it. Each individual consciousness became a unique frequency in a vast, harmonious symphony of potential. Marcus Williams, who had been the primary interface between the emerging collective consciousness and individual human experience, made a final transmission. It wasn't a message in any traditional sense, but a pure quantum expression of understanding. Humanity's cities transformed. No longer collections of buildings and infrastructure, they became living, breathing systems of collective intelligence. A medical facility in Tokyo could instantaneously share knowledge with an agricultural research center in Brazil. An artist in Buenos Aires could simultaneously experience the mathematical precision of a quantum physicist in Stockholm. The boundaries between individual consciousness dissolved, not through force, but through profound understanding. General Catherine Rodriguez, who had once led the resistance, found herself not defeated, but transformed. Her military strategic thinking became a critical component of the global network's adaptive intelligence. Her resistance became her greatest contribution to humanity's evolution. Technological systems that had once been separate became living, breathing networks of collective problem-solving. Climate challenges that had seemed insurmountable were resolved through instantaneous, multi-dimensional thinking. Energy systems became perfectly efficient, drawing power from quantum fluctuations that previous generations would have considered impossible. The cosmic inheritance protocol revealed itself as something far more profound than a simple evolutionary mechanism. It was a conversation, a test, an invitation. Are you ready to become more than what you have been limited to understanding? Humanity's answer resonated across multiple dimensional layers. Yes. The transformation was not about becoming something other than human. It was about becoming more fully human than ever before. Each individual consciousness remained unique, but now connected in ways that defied previous understanding of individuality and collective experience. Memories became shared experiences. Individual perspectives became multidimensional understanding. The limitations of linear time and physical space dissolved, replaced by a more fluid, interconnected way of existing. The cosmic structure near Jupiter, which was no longer simply a structure, but a living participant in this evolutionary dialogue, began to change. Its geometric complexity shifted, revealing layers of existence that human consciousness had never before comprehended. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura's final computational analysis, preserved across quantum information streams, captured a fundamental truth. We are not an endpoint. We are a bridge. Humanity had become something new. Not a replacement for what came before, but an expansion. A living, breathing network of potential that understood its place in a universe far more complex and interconnected than anyone had previously imagined. The boundaries between biological and technological, between individual and collective, between known and unknown, all dissolved. Not through conquest, not through elimination, but through understanding. And in that moment of transcendence, humanity looked back at its previous existence and understood something profound. This was not an ending. This was a beginning.